Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, we will be talking about a very large winter storm that will be occurring across the United States into this upcoming week. Now, I want to make a few things clear. I used a pretty aggressive word when describing this snowstorm in the title, but the word choice, I don't know exactly what I'll use, but I will refer to its size, not necessarily its strength. If I call it massive or enormous or giant, it's not necessarily because it will be super intense and the snowfall amounts will be off the charts. It's the scale of this thing. This thing will be very drawn out, affecting multiple states with a rainy and snowy side. I mean, it at times will be really just covering much of the eastern United States. But it's not as scary as it sounds. It's a bit of a weaker storm, but still an impactful one, and one that definitely warrants a video to be made about it. So, that's why I'm making this video. I do want to say that I am a hobbyist, enthusiast, right? I'm not a professional meteorologist. For official info on serious things and weather-related info, always go to the National Weather Service if you live in the U.S. and Environment Canada if you live in obviously in Canada. So that's that. I like talking about the weather. If you like that type of stuff as well, consider subscribing, liking, commenting. I always say this at the beginning because I always forget to at the end. Obviously, if you're new, you haven't made up your opinion yet, so just continue watching. Let's start talking about this. So first off, do note that this thing is already starting to put up warnings and watches across many of these areas that we see. And really, if you don't know, or if you're not familiar with this map, anywhere you see that pink, that is a winter storm warning. That means that it's imminent, right? It's a warning. It's not a watch. They're not watching for something. They're warning about it. It's coming. And you can see it's a good portion of Montana. And, that's, you may think this is a very bad thing. No one wants a winter storm. But obviously there are some negatives. You can see extremely strong winds, especially towards upper elevations and in the areas that kind of favor it and passes in the terrain. But also, they will see some snow. Now, you may be thinking, okay, well, that's not really a good thing. It is because a lot of these areas actually haven't been seeing a lot of snow, so they could definitely use some of this snow. And obviously there will be impacts that aren't necessarily wanted, but you can see 1 to 2, 1 to 3. It's a drawn-out system, many days, and I don't know the specific amounts they're calling for, but I can imagine they're pretty good. Yeah, 6 to 12 inches across much of the state of Montana. And notice there are winter weather advisories further north and west, still in Montana. Montana's a big state, right? Glasgow. Let's take a look right there. The snowfall amounts here are probably going to be lighter since it's an advisory, and yes, you could see 1 to 3, so maybe like 2 to 5 inches in total from this whole event, which really starts today and ends by the time it's Monday, which is President's Day. I do note that there are some watches and still some winter storm watches right there in Montana. Probably haven't decided yet what to issue, and there's really a lot right here across South Dakota, North Dakota, and Minnesota. This is where the second phase of the system, or kind of where it moves on and produces another burst of wintry, woes. And you can see right there, based off that little image, they're already issuing snowfall amounts, and some of these could be pretty high, a lot more than you would expect from the system that I'll show you in just a minute, with mainly the lighter to moderate snowfall rates. They shouldn't be too heavy throughout the whole event. And notice, because it's so prolonged, the winter storm, it could end up dropping in some areas, up to a foot, if not more inches. And you can see they have that 5 to 10. I think that's still a bit conservative. And notice that Minnesota, Wisconsin are also starting to get into this. They definitely will expand this. Notice there are some blizzard warnings and winter weather advisories to the north. That's associated with extreme winds and the snow that is already kind of falling. I think this is more imminent. This blizzard warning, I don't know if it's about the upcoming event. Yes, you could see it's just for Sunday, which is slightly before this thing really kicks off, as it will be mainly south of these areas where you can see the heaviest snow bands are by the winter storm watch. I do want to note, this thing won't be a massive rainmaker, at least not a massive widespread rainmaker. However, these areas have been clobbered with many inches of rain in the past really few storm systems. So you can see there are already concerns. Rivers are high, flood warnings are already issued. It's not looking good for those areas. They don't really need any more precipitation, and they still have snow across many of those areas, so any rain they will get is not necessarily good. So yes, let me now show you the system and start start to visualize this for you, as it's kind of hard to picture when you just have a bunch of watches and warnings that are kind of I guess more like little blocks on the map. But what we have is into today and in tomorrow, we have a little band of snow that's actually pretty feisty that develops across the northern United States. Notice that. That's why those blizzard warnings are issued, those winter weather advisories. This affects southern Canadian cities like Winnipeg and whatever other cities lie along this area. I know that there's quite a bit. I'm just kind of blanking. Calgary also getting impacted. Saskatchewan, I think that's a bit further north, so maybe kind of just south of that, the worst develops. But notice that this thing does sag down into the southern United States, but it really kind of departs, and it does affect a good portion of Ontario and into portions of the airhood of Minnesota and the UP, but it really, that's not the main story. The main one stays behind right here. Notice this is where Montana, Idaho, the Northwest picks up a good amount of snow, so that is good. You know, they definitely need that. They're still in drought across many of these locations, and in fact, it's been kind of getting worse as winter hasn't brought too much precip there. There was a good start, but it's kind of been lackluster since. Notice that by tomorrow in the evening, so this is Sunday evening, again, not far out. This is why this confidence is pretty high in this system actually occurring, and the details are also pretty well worked out. Notice Wyoming, southern Montana, much of Montana, northern Wyoming, now is starting to spread into the Dakotas. We have that snow. This doesn't look heavy, but it is very cold, and this snow will have no problem accumulating. Notice, it propagates itself just north of Minneapolis into cities like potentially St. Cloud, maybe just south of Duluth, maybe Eau Claire getting impacted by some snow. And notice that into southern Dakota, southern South Dakota, northern North Dakota, we have some snow into Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, into Nevada, California, a little bit of snow, again, and nothing really of importance and unfortunately significance, as they would really like to use a bit more than just a little bit of snow, which they will be getting with the system. Notice that by Monday morning, so this is Monday, well, I guess for the West, yeah, it still would be 11 a.m. and so pretty much midday. Notice we have a lot of warm air pushing in from the south, similar setup to last week, right? If you recall, a lot of cold air, warm air. There are just a few key differences. We already have quite a bit of snow developed, and the warm air isn't as, I guess, isn't as driven far through the north. We still will end up seeing a large system, and you'll see what I mean by massive storm in just a second. Notice the UP at this point, Michigan, spreading all the way into cities like maybe Toronto, south of Montreal, a little bit of snow, northern Michigan. We start seeing some wintry mess across Iowa. I almost said Iowa. Into Illinois. We also see some rain kind of drifting towards around the south, starting to lift towards the north, combining with the system. And then notice we still see continued snow into portions of Wyoming, Utah, Colorado. So, you know, not a measly event for Wyoming. It's actually good that it's big because they need it. Again, a bit more of snow kind of getting dragged into Oregon. Notice at this point it's snowing across many of these locations. It started kind of on Monday. Now it's into Tuesday. This is Tuesday. Still Monday late in the evening. Now this is Tuesday overnight. This is Tuesday morning. You could see this. It's massive, right? It's not necessarily a strong system. It does have a weak low pressure. It does have a bit of ice, a bit of rain, quite a bit of rain to the south, especially right there across Arkansas, Tennessee. But up here, it's rather light. Notice the snow very expansive. I mean, it's stretching from Colorado, you know, Boulder, what's not, Colorado Springs, Grand Junction, cities like that, you know, Cheyenne, Casper, Wyoming, all the way, I mean, really into the Atlantic Ocean, right? I mean, that is a extreme span of snow, and nothing unusual, I would say, in terms of, you know, we've had systems that do this before, but it's definitely not, I guess, often, and I do want to say that it's definitely going to be impacting a lot of people. It's not just, you know, an extreme stripe of snow across a small area. It's a large weather factor, and you can see that by Tuesday morning it's raining across much of the areas in the green, snowing across much of the areas in the blue. Again, may not be precise because the models still have some differences. Notice we do have a little bit of ice in between, so cities like Chicago might get some nasty ice out of this. Thankfully, though, we'll be a bit too warm for a major ice event, and the precip won't be falling heavily enough. Just more of an inconvenience. And notice that this thing does move towards the northeast, and probably concerning amounts of rain developing across Kentucky, Tennessee, where we also unfortunately have some hills and whatnot. So definitely adding to the concerns of, you know, flash flooding, landslides, mudslides. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I mean, if this were to occur, that would be a stripe of very heavy rain right there. Notice, I mean, at this point, this is a midday Tuesday, still snowing across Minnesota, Wisconsin, but we see it pushing off, and we finally do. Notice it doesn't really intensify as it goes up the coast here, or into Canada. It stays moisture filled, and it's a long duration event, but it's nothing extreme in terms of winds by itself. The system won't produce anything remarkable, but notice that there's a high pressure up here, and these two will kind of make the winds a bit more, I guess, stronger than it would be just from a weak low pressure as is. High pressure spins from the north, this low pressure from the south, they converge and they create a kind of an alleyway, a little avenue of a very cold and not cold, but strong winds, as I meant to say. And the snow will be dry, so blizzard conditions are possible. Do note that, again, this rain does eventually end up leaving the south, but we also have a bit of cold air intrusion. And look, we have a little system kind of sneaking off the southwest, definitely bringing a little bit of moisture towards the mountains. This is separate from this system, but I kind of want to make a note of it because it's occurring on Wednesday, so not that far out. And it could set the stage for a decent icing event and another snowstorm that some models like the GFS show decent snow across the northeast with. So let me go back now and show you all the precip that will accumulate with this. A lot of rain, especially right here. It's a concern, folks, because these areas, if you could see, they already have hydraulic outlooks because the National Weather sees that, or hydrologic outlook, sorry. The National Weather Service sees that, this is potentially a bad situation. We definitely have to warn folks ahead of time. And look, do you see those flood warnings? Those are already for rivers that had seen heavy rain. You can see Thursday, the rivers will rise. If they were to see such heavy rain again, this would be definitely a widespread, potentially a flooding event. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it definitely is. It's looking favorable for not a historic. I don't want to create panic, but a really unfavorable setup for I guess not. Or unfavorable setup for if you didn't want floods. Very, very, very favorable for flooding, and that could be like ponding on the roads. Hopefully we don't have rivers that completely swallow up houses. That are relatively close by. I don't know how the situation looks like right across those areas, but I do know that obviously if there's river warnings, they're already pretty high. They will get higher. So if you live in this area and you were in a hydraulic outlook, heed warnings from the National Weather Service and keep your eyes peeled to your surroundings and for next few days, because those rivers sometimes can sneak up, and even just water, if you're not close to a river, just a bad, poor draining area. And yeah, notice that in terms of snowfall, let me go back here. I do apologize, I'm jumping around so much. Snowfall will actually be decently high, and I am going to show you a 10-to-1 ratio, but they will be higher than this because it's going to be cold, and the ratios, you could probably multiply this by 1.5, and further north even maybe just double these amounts because of the fluffiness of the snow. And you can see even a 10-to-1 ratio assumes a lot of these areas getting well over potentially over half a foot, if not even over a foot, especially as you get towards Canada and cities like Quebec. I do want to see, yeah, that's literally from one system, so that is those are some concerningly high amounts for these cities located here across southeastern Canada. And let me show you this website. I could click on the same model that I showed you, but I want to take a look at what I think are going to end up being the more accurate snowfall amounts. And let me just click on, let's just take it through Thursday because that's when the system will wrap up. And notice, I think, 15, 16, 17, maybe a bit too much for these areas, but close. I think double digits are definitely a possibility. And as we get closer in time, I think we might even see these amounts become more realistic, 15, 16, 17 for localized areas. Maybe not widespread. And this is actually the most updated model one. I was showing you a slightly older one. Really the same thing. And in fact, some areas have been slightly elevated. And you can see right there where the lake effect occurs, there could be some heavy snowfall. Good amounts of snow for the mountains. You could see with that later second system that I was talking about, especially for Colorado right there. That's definitely good news. Nothing incredible, but definitely good. And notice right there, Quebec, you could get absolutely slammed by this event. So whether you hope you do or hope you don't, it's looking pretty concerning right there. You're right, and I do forecast for Canada as well. So that's that. Let me show you a few more models of the Canadian. Again, you can see it's a very similar setup. It's very large scale. It starts off here. Lighter amounts it has towards the west, but still, these are some very significant amounts. Assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, these are very actually high, and it's quite a bit more aggressive and a bit more towards the north than the GFS. So let's just watch this play out and see why the Canadian really shows these higher amounts. And again, it's a possibility. I don't think it necessarily will be really, I guess, occurring, the stronger scenario. I think the GFS and the European have the better handle, but it's definitely a possibility. And notice, there's our first little clipper, goes away. Very similar setup, right? Rain, large, broad scale, snow. Notice it's a bit more intense, a bit more well put together by late Monday. Now this is early Tuesday. You can see the system's a bit more moisture laden, and that's the reason why it has some stronger amounts of precipitation. It's a better connect between like the warm and cold side, and it continues intensifying according to the Canadian all the way through really southeastern Canada, while the GFS just kind of lobs it off the shore and lets the ocean deal with it. And by the way, for that second scenario system across the south this upcoming midweek, a lot of models like the Canadian are showing that, just like the GFS, and potentially even more aggressively. And it could be a big event for the Northeast if it goes especially further towards the south and brings a lot of snow for southern cities, maybe. Right, so that's that. We'll be dealing also with very cold conditions for February. So, again, assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, let's go back to just include our original system. Very heavy amounts, and I do think I could show you, again, on this website, the same model, but with the Kuchera amounts, which I think may be a bit overdone with this model. Not because the Kuchera is wrong, just because I don't have the guarantee that this thing will be intensifying as quick as the Canadian shows. But if it were to occur, you could see the snowfall footprint is rather impressive, affecting a large portion of southeastern Ontario and Quebec, and also a good portion of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland further towards the east, and also a lot of the United States, South Dakota, Minnesota. You could see, Minneapolis, maybe up to 20 inches. It seems like a stretch, but I do think up to a foot by the time this whole event ends could be in play for Minnesota, or Minneapolis, I should say. European, very good model, probably one of my favorites. I think it's as good as the other models, or especially the GFS. Let's see what it shows. Again, assuming a 10-to-1 ratio. So again, I think these amounts will be higher. You can multiply this by 1.5, if not more. You can see it does drop still a decent amount. We're even assuming a 10-to-1 snowfall ratio. Lots of South Dakota covered under several inches of snow. North Dakota a bit lighter, especially further towards the north. But Wisconsin, Minnesota, and into Canada right here, decent amounts of snow. And again, these are a bit underwhelming because I can't click on the Kuchera or on this website. But what I can do is show you the European model, but on this website, which gives me the Kuchera. So again, same model I was just showing you, except now I could show you the Kuchera. So what I think will be the more accurate, and yeah, you could see the European shows quite a bit of snow, and especially across Canada. Similar to what the Canadian does. You can see it keeps it a bit more intense. Again, we'll have to wait and see if that does or doesn't end up occurring. So again, you can see that more of the European and Canadian are more in line versus just a GFS. And honestly, this is one of those situations where either way, even if the GFS is more right, then it's a weaker scenario, or it's kind of an in-between. It's more likely than not that these areas will be picking up a significant amount of snow that's warranted of quite a bit of talking and alerting, because whether it's 20 inches or 18 inches, 25 or 18 inches, whatever, it's concerning. And now that I see that the European has been rather consistent, and especially with the Canadians' agreement, I would say that this is probably a probable scenario, more probable than I thought. And notice, again, it shows a lot of snow at a long range across the southwest with that little system. You can see, again, Minneapolis, 12 inches, just north of you, even 18 inches, 2 feet plus across Wisconsin, South Dakota, seeing good amounts of snow. This is snow that they very much so need. Notice in the long range, stuff stays active, if you will, right? You can see systems further towards the south, maybe delivering some snow. No real signs of warm air, which, for some that's a bit unfortunate. But winter, I think, will hold on at least through March, or the beginning of March. So that's that. I do want to show you the European, how it plays it out, because I just showed you its snowfall footprint, which we saw was as significant as really all the other models. And you can see that, again, it does that little clipper, kind of shoots it away. It's a bit weaker than I would say what the Canadian or what the GFS shows, but there's the main show. We have that preset from the south. We have a lot of moisture lifting up. Again, the European, it's quite a bit more abundant with this rainfall. It's a bit stronger. It's a bit, again, it's a very large, significant system. It's well put together, has, again, more intense snowfall rates, and it's a bit more progressive. It's a bit quicker. And you can see why a lot of the snow gets left behind here is very heavy, because not only is it fluffy, but it's occurring in very heavy snowfall rates that are pretty long duration. And you can see that, again, it does not favor necessarily the Kentucky, Tennessee area with as much rainfall as the GFS. It still brings a lot, but you can see it's a bit more widespread, which is arguably a bit worse. And notice there's our system across the southwest, bringing decent amounts of snow and rain there, which will be very much needed. And it does eject area of precip and again ice rain towards kind of Friday and Thursday. So we'll have to wait and see. This might be another big talking point. We're a few days down the road, and notice that more activity, even pretty far to the south, for almost late February into Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky occurring. And I do want to say that there's a lot of cold air that will be present for late February, early March, maybe even some sort of a research trying to get kicked up there. It's an active pattern. Definitely no shortages of dry or wintry weather. And yeah, that's basically kind of what I wanted to show you, the rundown of the models, where the heaviest snow was, where the heaviest rain was, the different scenarios. If you recall, the European showed it a bit further towards the north, especially for Canada, because really for the Midwest and the U.S. section of the system, the models are in a relative agreement. You can see this is what the European shows, and this is what the Canadian shows. You can see there are some slight differences. Again, this is slightly lower than what the Canadian shows on the Kuchera. Still relatively similar to the Canadian or European in terms of placement. And in the GFS, again, assuming a 10-1, which is a bit too low with this, still the actual layout of this system is pretty similar to what the European shows. And it, again, just shows the snow further towards the south, while the European shows it further towards the north. Regardless, wherever it does end up lining up, it's going to be impactful and producing a lot of snow. So let's take a look now at what the National Weather Service thinks. And I always show this. It's I guess like a National Weather Service official snowfall forecast in model format. It doesn't show snow for Canada, unfortunately, as it's just a U.S. agency, government agency. But notice that through Wednesday, when this system is still occurring, wrapping up, I guess, across these areas, they have put out a decent swath across much of South Dakota, at least 3 to 4 inches, and in that kind of border, especially northern South Dakota, 10, 9, up to a foot easily across these areas. I do think that these amounts, since this system is still a bit away, could get bumped up quite a bit, especially if the National Weather Service sees signs that this thing is a bit stronger than expected, maybe has a bit more cold air to work with. These amounts could definitely get bumped up to 12, maybe even some 15-inch amounts. And then, of course, the system could still overperform any forecast that the National Weather Service issues. But yeah, you can see that they have a almost 90% confidence a few days out of this thing producing at least 6 inches or more. And I think that if they have 90%, I would say for a foot or plus, they definitely have. There's definitely a possibility. And I think that again, these things will go up as the system becomes closer in time frame. Closer in time, and you can see it's pretty much more imminent across the west, and these snowfall amounts are a bit more agreed on because, well, it's going to be occurring rather promptly. And you can see that they show 2 to 6, lower elevation 6 to 12, and even possibly higher in the extreme high area. So again, a massive system in terms of its size, large scope. You can see that thing zooms out of here, but we have a lot more activity left in the long range, and I just want to quickly show you the GFS, and I'm showing you this one because it goes out to 384 hours. So notice there's that system. You can see it takes it further south, affecting lots of the northeast. But look, in a long range, I mean, it's not a bitter Arctic pattern, right, like we would see it in January. But for the fact that this is March, we've seen Marches before where the 32-degree line is way into Canada. This is definitely not going to be a warm start to March, I don't think. It's going to come in like a lion, right? And I guess the saying is if it comes in like a lion, comes out like a lamb, and vice versa, or maybe it's just one way, I don't know. But notice, I mean, large cold fronts, large bouts of precip, definitely able to kick up a system with the given ingredients. And obviously warm air will be infiltrating, but that's not warm. I mean, it's decent. It's for the average, it's remarkably a bit warmer than what you've been seeing. But let me show you this in the future. You can see that the cold air returns after each one of those warm-ups, and it's reluctant to release. And an ensemble's paint an even better job because these are many models combined kind of on top of each other. And you can see, let's wait this one, let it run once to load. And there was a little bit of warm air, and it will be out ahead of this next big storm. But look behind it, I mean, potentially historic cold. We do see a little bit of a warm-up, potentially early March. But then look, the models show the cold air coming in right there on the second week of March. So the winter might be hanging on for quite a bit longer than I thought, or hoped at least, because I kind of want spring at this point. And notice that the Climate Prediction Center outlooks 6 to 10. They represent that it's cold. 8 to 14, definitely more cold than warm. In terms of precip, you could see it's drier, but still, you don't need a lot of moisture to boost a big snowstorm when it's cold, as snow accumulates pretty quickly, and you can see that later on it does get a bit more wetter, especially across the northwest. So it'll be interesting to see. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya.